welcome back to the astrology interview. Now, today I have lovely Liz Hathway with me, who lives in Amsterdam. And now Liz is a very eclectic astrologer, but what she's also is an academic researcher. And I'm really interested in your passion, if you like, for ritual and astrological magic and how to bring that into our work as an astrologer. And I love the fact your book is just coming out and it's called Daughter of Saturn. And I've loved the fact it's taken rather a long time to do. That's very Saturn, isn't it? So, and also I want to find more out about why you're so interested in the whole concept of ritual and symbolism and this kind of concept of how we can better connect, if you like, with the invisible worlds, the invisible realms. And I think that's very much what astrology is, that we're working with the invisible realms of the chart and obviously the cosmos. So before we launch into more of this, I just want to sort of ask you, what exactly is astrological magic and how can we incorporate that into our work to help us understand the whole concept of astrology better?
Well, I think astrological magic is quite a big subject now. It wasn't when I started to first get interested in it. But basically, anytime you make an election or you elect a chart,
Can you just explain for people who don't understand election? Could you
so
just
election
explain?
is choosing a moment. So you're choosing a moment. So if you're working with astrological magic or making talismans, then what you're looking for is a good moment to talk to the gods or to talk to the god or to engage with the spirit. And you do that through making an election when you place that planet in a really good position to hear your prayer, to open up to you. And I think the kind of astrological magic that I see now is not the kind of astrological magic that I've ever been engaged with myself. So my interest goes right back into the 1990s, like 1998, 1999. And I'll give you the title of a journal article now,
Mm.
Sue, because you might want to look it up, because this is what really got me going with it. It's an article by a guy called Ilia Durovic, and he wrote an article in the May-June journal of the Astrological Association way back in 1998, and it was about talismans. And this guy, he is actually a Buddhist. And at the time of writing this article, he was doing research at the British Museum. And I've never heard from him again, and I've never heard from him since. But he set me off on a certain path. And I think, like, the reason you take a certain path is very much, I think, related to the kind of birth chart you have. So, for example, I'm a Scorpio rising. I have the North Node in the first house, and I have Pluto exactly conjunct the midheaven. In the late, it just retrograded, I think, the day before back into Leo, and it's square the nodes. And I've got
Wow.
Neptune very close to the ascendant in the 12th house. And so at the time I started working with talismans, I was having a Neptune square, that transit. So it was all there. I was always as a child, I had magical experiences. I grew up in a religious setting where people talked about the Holy Ghost and as if it was something real. So it was always there. So what happens when I read this piece by Ilia Durovic, it was like, wow, it pulled a lot of things, together, that I'd been, you could say, dabbling with things like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Edwin Steinbrecher and the inner guide to meditation. I mean, I was doing that in the early 80s. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I'd never heard of, active imagination or journeying or anything like that. I just was reading things and, that kind of scorpionic Pluto midheaven. I want to do it. I want to engage. I want to try it. And I'm going to say straight off, I have badly burned my fingers with things, like moving into the invisible world without the right safeguards. So there is a need for caution there. But on the other hand, as I said, it's part of my own spiritual development and my own trip, if you like, on my own journey, astrological journey, which, yeah, has always been about getting to know more deeply. That's my moon in Cancer
Yeah.
in the ninth. It's personal. Everything about my astrology is a personal journey. It's very much all about me in a way. Leo midheaven as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's very,
Does that make sense to you?
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
So when you kind of, I mean, you must have all, as you say, you were brought up with that lovely Neptune in the 12th, and then you've got Pluto on the midheaven,
Yeah.
and then the right time came along, that Neptune square. So what happened for you? Did you suddenly step into a different understanding about what magic really is about? What happened for you?
Well, as it happened, like when I read that article, I think it was shortly after that Jupiter came into Pisces. And I thought if there's ever an energy to work with as a first attempt at doing something, then a benevolent planet in its own sign, it has to be, the right moment to take that step.
Yeah,
So I took it incredibly seriously because like there's a sort of, certainly if you've come from a religious background, any kind of step you take into magic, you're crossing into a taboo. It's almost like you've heard all the stories growing up, and there's a bit of fear in there. So I took a lot of safeguards. For example, on the practical level, completely cleaning my space, like keeping the dog out, hoovering, doors open, fumigating, working in a circle of salt, for example, which I thought was a
yeah.
good idea, just making. But yeah, I took a lot of time doing the election. So you kind of move towards that moment, there's like you're picking up pieces as you go along the way. You're reading, for example, I bought the three books of occult philosophy because what Durovic also did was he gave some lists of these are the books, this is if you're interested, let
Yeah.
this go. So you've suddenly got some kind of tools there.
Mm.
So, you surround yourself with that planet in color, in herb, in stone, I wrote myself because what you're going to actually do at the time that the ritual is happening, because it's a ritual, at least that's how I see it, when Jupiter is crossing the midheaven, because I think you've got a minute or so before it comes onto the midheaven, and then a few minutes after. So it's a very short window of opportunity. And I had a piece of tin and a hammer and a nail because I obviously haven't, I'm not going to be working with hot molten metal. So it's almost like kind of folk magic in a way.
Alchemy.
Yeah. And I hammered
Yeah.
the Jupiter into this piece of tin
Wow.
while saying because it's all about will as well. What do I will? What am I putting into this object? What is my firm, not even desire, but what am I trying to make manifest in this object? While at the same time trying to implore the spirits to bless this thing that you're doing. So it's a kind of there was a bit of it that was crossing borders, if you like. But once I was in that circle, I completely kept all outside of it. And that focus completely on that
Mm.
one aim, that one thing that you're busy with. And then, but you become, in that moment, your senses are incredibly sharp. It's almost like, if a feather fell on the floor, you'd hear it. It's so kind of intense in a way because it's had a build up, and this is the crescendo, the moment manifest, if you like. And yeah, then there's that moment when you feel, I didn't have an alarm clock or anything like that. You kind of almost feel, because you're so into that moment, that crucial crossing the midheaven moment has passed. You just know it. And then it's
Wow.
kind of like, wow, yeah, yeah. And
Wow.
so I had the four elements there, like water, fire.
Mm.
Obviously, never speak about God without a flame, right? You've always got to have that upward moving flame.
That's
So
interesting.
that
Yeah.
was the first, and then
Yes.
I kind of, it was followed by three dreams, so it set off a psychic process inwardly. The three dreams are, because I keep a diary as well. So, those three dreams, I listed them. So I can tell you the three dreams if you want to hear them.
If you want to, if it's relevant, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think they were relevant. So they were three dreams which were surrounding the period of making the talisman, and they all shared a similar link. So the first one was on February the 3rd, 1999. And it was like these members of the Antiques Roadshow visited my house. And, they were looking, I was trying to show them things of value, which, they weren't really interested in. And then suddenly they spotted some strange silver colored object, which made me think of the tin that I had been making
Yeah.
the talisman from. And I couldn't imagine what this was for, why they were interested in it. And the experts told me that it had something to do with the function of the eye and that it was valuable. So I thought, okay, that's something. So the second one was there was a large swimming pool with clear blue water, and this was a rectangle. There was a rectangle, sorry, which was dug out, which was deeper than the rest of this pool. And it was filled with real sea life, plants and fish. It was sort of a real world within an artificial one. And the people that were there were awaiting some kind of a strange fate. Anyway, there was a sudden moment where, the male and female people that were sat in the tribune sort of embraced each other and started to
Wow.
make love. And the female removed her outer clothing to reveal a shining metal body. That was the end of that dream. Really
Whoa,
odd. And then
that's so alchemical, the masculine and the
yeah,
feminine. It's the magnus opus.
yeah,
Wow. Okay.
really odd. So then the final dream was on the 27th of May, 1999, and I was in some sand dunes, and I was pushing something. It might have been a pram. And I was coming to a back against the wall situation. I'm surrounded by a gang of children who are aged about 5 or 6, and they're quite hostile to me. So I think there's some childhood memory coming up there. And I'm really scared. And then there was a sensation of something coming over my ear. And I think it was my left one. And I believe my ear is going to be bitten off. Have I bitten? Anyway, there's flesh in my mouth, two pieces which I spit out into my hand, and they lie there like gristle. I want to wake up, and I'm trying to say the name of my partner, and I awake formulating the letter R,
Wow.
A. So
Gosh.
for me, it was this the whole journey through
Wow.
talismans was psychologically really deep
Yeah.
and really profound, because I think that had to do with this crossing of taboos and going into things like the Grand
Yes.
Cross eclipse is another one,
Yes,
that
yes,
are
yes, yes. I'm just
so
wondering, as I'm listening to you talk, it sounds so alchemical. It sounds old. It sounds
yeah,
ancient. It sounds like this is what people were doing back in medieval, times when
yeah,
astrological magic was regarded as as completely taboo, and
yeah,
people were doing it behind closed doors. That's really interesting, Liz. And that
yeah.
led you to do the work that you do now.
Well, like I said, I made a series of talismans in that period. So I made a Jupiter talisman, which I must say your invite to talk led me to dust that off. And I recharged it this morning because it's
Oh,
Jupiter, Sun,
yeah.
Kazini today on my ninth house Uranus as well. So I thought, right, I'm going to charge this talisman back. I made a Saturn one, and I also, for example, have made like pieces to use in workshops. So
Mm,
I did I think it was a series of 4 workshops I did with Faye Blake. We did in
yeah.
Amsterdam on the Saturn Pluto conjunction. And for that, I made a kind of, I can show you, um, I made a sort of just a symbolic, because I think symbols are great. So I made a kind of a symbolic, I don't know if you can actually see.
Oh my gosh.
So I
Yes.
took this to the workshop, and
Yeah.
then
Can you just
people,
hold it up a bit more?
can you see?
Yes, yes. That's Saturn. Oh, yes, absolutely. Saturn, Jupiter. Absolutely.
Saturn,
Saturn,
Pluto, Pluto.
Pluto. Yeah.
So what happened was, there was a talk in the morning, and then people were asked to bring a symbolic object to the workshop, which for them embodied Saturn, Pluto, and then people were invited to talk about the object that they had brought, and they laid it. So we had an altar. So that's where, the whole idea of altars come in, because
Yeah.
the minute you present a group with a sort of centerpiece, which emanates a certain type of energy, and it's clear what it's about, it's not a confused message. This is Saturn, Pluto, you
Yeah.
know, place your object on this altar, and we're going to talk about what you've brought, and it was absolutely fascinating, because you see, when you start to work with symbols, that the sky's the limit, because everybody relates to them in different unique ways. So you start to get, like really deep, you come to deep places when you start to do that. So
But
yeah,
also is I'm just thinking about, to work on that level of depth with Pluto and Saturn, you need courage to do that because they are the two heavies. And,
yeah,
so they're about death and rebirth as well. I mean,
yeah,
certainly
yeah,
death and aging and all the stuff that we get paranoid
yeah,
about. So
yeah.
that did death come into the conversation?
Sure, yeah, because some people brought objects that related to family members,
Yeah,
or, the theme of loss was quite often in there, not always, but quite often, there was some element of also fear of letting go, or, things that related to a tarot reading that someone had had, a card from years before. I mean, that's what I mean. It's really interesting just to see what connections people make when you offer them symbols, because it's not always what you would expect either. You know what I mean? Yeah.
thing, isn't it? So, this would mean nothing to anybody, but for
No.
me, because it's mine and where I bought it from and what
Yeah.
it means something very personal to me. And I think
Yeah.
that's absolutely fascinating, isn't it? And this is what Jung was saying that the whole of life is a symbol, or it's
Yeah.
symbols, and it
Yeah.
is, but they only come alive when you relate to them.
Yeah. Definitely.
Something up and you just go, oh, that.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, I'm working as a psychic and medium as well, and often when something is coming through, and I'm not quite sure what it is, a symbol will arrive in my consciousness, or I'll look out the window and see something, and it's just bingo, that's it. And
Yeah.
it's what is this? How does it work? This unseen world that's so rich in meaning. How does it work?
Yeah. Well, if I had the answer to that one thing, I'd probably be very, very rich or something. I
Yeah,
mean, let's be honest. I think because we grow up within the world paradigm we grow up in, we expect there to be answers to everything. Everything there has to be a rational, scientific, do you know what I mean? Explanation for everything. And there isn't. It's as simple as that. There isn't. There is more to life, Horatio, right, than your philosophy ever dreamt of, or whatever the quote is.
yeah,
So there is much more. And when you start to move into more like the work that you're doing, or some of the work that I've done, where you go into, you're tapping into something else. Yeah, you
yeah,
become really, what's the word? You just kind of develop also a kind of respect, caution, openness, the whole range of different things. But you do know it's real, that there is something there. There is something
yeah. Now, I'm
definitely there.
talking to a wonderful dowser called Ali Denham, actually this morning, and we were discussing the role of plasma And she's really convinced that plasma has a maybe is a carrier or something of the unseen imprints. I don't know if that's what we're maybe that's what we're talking about. And I also think hydrogen is maybe the carrier
Mm.
imprints and maybe they work together. I don't know. I'm talking off the top of my head.
Yeah,
Seems that's possible.
yeah,
And certainly telepathy, the imprints of telepathy. I think there's lots of different levels of telepathy as well. And I just wondered whether you receive telepathic communications as you're doing your rituals, and if you do, who do they come from?
yeah. I do. Personally, I think like, we have maybe guardians or spirits or a spirit that's, a good daemon that's with us through our life. I believe in that. I've felt that presence a few times, because as I said, I have burnt my fingers here and there for sure in things I've done. But I've always had, because I think I've gone into everything I've gone into with a kind of childlike innocence towards it. And my intention is always good. And I think for that reason, I've got Jupiter in the 11th house that, I've got a good daemon there in Libra. So there's some kind of, I feel that there's some kind of protective film there in a way. But I'm very sensitive to energies. And when I was younger, I used to have trouble with that. I'd pick up energy from places. So I think I've learned to be more Saturnine the older I've got, right? The more earthy you become, I think you're slower, so you're more connected to the ground in a way as you get older.
You're a good old-fashioned Capricorn.
I am, yeah, I am a good old-fashioned Capricorn. It's true, but I do. I mean, this sort of work is kind of, I went on from that into shamanism. I did before COVID came along. I was doing quite a few things in London with the harness school there with Nicolai. What's her name now? So she's an Italian shaman. She runs the school in London. So I did a kind of a ritual with her together. She did the journeying and I did the astrology part. We did that on the Jupiter Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. So it's kind of comes in and out of my life, if you know what I mean. And yeah, so that shamanism was kind of interrupted with COVID because yeah, things were happening then online. And I think what I'm on the edge of now, what I'm sort of kind of stepping into a bit more now is family constellations. But then in Holland we have what's called systemic or systemisch werken, we call it. Um, People like Dan from Camperhout. Again, it's definitely on the edge of the spiritual, on the magical, on the kind of psychic energy, what's moving.
Mm.
So I'm always there. It's never far away, if you know what I mean. I'm also a very, very good dreamer, as you just saw. So my dreams are, and not all the time. I can have a year when very little happens, and then I'll have a succession of dreams. But
Yeah.
that's definitely a part of who I am as well, that willingness to accept a dream, a message from a dream, which is almost like mantic in a way.
It was really interesting. I was listening to something on Radio 4 last night about dreams. And somebody keeping a dream dictionary and trying,
Yeah,
and also sort of imprinting a question into his dreams and waiting for the answer to come. It was very interesting. And
yeah,
it's interesting that modern science, inverted commas, has, since the Industrial Revolution and since the time of Enlightenment, has closed down all of this incredibly rich, fertile, wonderful, magic
mm,
realms.
mm,
And I was talking to Ali today about the elementals, that we don't even are not even conscious of them anymore. Where, before the Industrial Revolution, I would have imagined everything was popping, I would imagine.
mm,
And we
yeah,
destroyed their habitat, and where do they go, and what's happened to them? And I'm just curious about how do we open this up again? How do we encourage people to say, look, you're not nuts? That the messages of
yeah,
the universe are a constant flow. I
yeah,
do believe that the universe wants the best for us.
yeah.
that is for our highest good, and it might be a jolly good thumping
Yeah.
at times.
Yeah.
Wake up, wake up. So where are you with all of that?
Well, I think, for example, like the conversation we're having now, I think that's like, I think these conversations are happening with a lot of people.
Yes.
I mean, we're not the only ones having this discussion, and the very fact that it's out there a little bit more than it used to be allows people who are having experiences that are out of the ordinary or unexplainable. It allows those people not to feel so isolated in what they're experiencing. There's other people who share that or having similar things, so that makes it feel a bit better as well, I think. But I think like Pluto and Aquarius now, I think one of the things that we saw last time, with Pluto and Aquarius was, when we had that heavy sort of industrialization going on, et cetera, et cetera. You also see a sort of return to nature coming back in there, a return to us, the new romantics and, the poets of that time, going out into the countryside, wanting to connect with nature, wanting to slow the pace of life down. And I think slowly, I think that is something as well that we're going to see, that people are, because they're Jupiter in Leo, let's be honest, that is a great opportunity to start to find it in yourself and not like be looking at influencer A, B, or C, you know what I mean? So astrology can help, I think, to make those connections for people, because that's what one of my themes with my clients this year is, where's your Jupiter in Leo, listen to
Yeah,
yourself, you're your own teacher, you're knowledgeable, your own knowledge.
absolutely. And also I think, it's very interesting how the elementals are coming back, earth, air, fire, and water. And
Yeah,
a lot of workshops on the importance of understanding the elemental balance in your chart and seeing where there is an imbalance and where you automatically draw that in.
yeah,
Give you an example. I had a client this week, no water. So what she does, she
yeah.
swims all the time.
She what? Sorry.
Swims,
Swims.
swims.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And she's very
yeah,
drawn to Piscean people.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because, that it's like whatever we are lacking, and I don't think that's the right word, but whatever element isn't present, I'll put it that way,
yeah,
strongly,
yeah,
we automatically draw either people that represent that,
yeah,
or we do something in our world to draw that element into our life.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
fascinated by that.
Yeah, no, I think that's it's like it's the basic, fundament of or one of the fundaments of astrology, isn't it? The elements, the four elements. I mean, that's so important, and you're absolutely right. And I agree. I always give that real attention as well. If there's an element missing, it's a bit like a red flag, isn't it? You think, okay, how is that? How is that working now? Then, it's really, and yeah, or a lack of aspects. For example, if you haven't got an opposition in your chart, or if you haven't got a square in your chart, what kind of, how's your life when, you get your first
Absolutely.
Saturn Sun square, what happened
Yeah.
then?
It's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I just had a fascinating experience with a client who had Pluto in her seventh house square her Venus in the fourth.
Mhm.
Then she was explaining, or I was saying, how does that play out in your relationships? And she just said, just power and control, big things for me, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And something else was playing out as well. But it's just present, isn't it? And it
Yeah.
for me that and I always say to people, there's nothing wrong with you,
Yeah.
just playing out the chart that you were born with. That's all that's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So many people are told that there's something
Yeah.
wrong with them. And I think this whole concept of opening up to magic and the astrological magic is enabling people to understand there is nothing wrong with them. They just are
Yeah.
playing out what they've come here to play out.
Yeah. No, I mean, as I said, how I see it manifesting around me at the moment is completely different to the sort of way I went into it. I mean, I didn't want to go to, I don't know, because you can buy online, a talisman for Jupiter, for example. And these are, really lovely, cast, you can pay 400 quid or dollars or whatever, but then you haven't had the experience. You've kind of almost been like a typical, like we go to the shop and buy anything else. You go there.
Then,
I didn't want that. I mean, but that opportunity wasn't there because way back then there was no shops online. There was no way to go and buy it unless you went to India. I think in India, certainly I went to India in the early 90s. There you could buy talismans. They were on sale there already then, but I didn't know anything about the background. But I think the personal experience, it kind of creates a relationship. And that's the other point I wanted to make actually as well about the importance of ritual and shrines. So, for example, I made a Saturn talisman. As you know, I'm a Capricorn, right? I've got quite a strong Saturn in my chart, semi-square the sun. So I made a Saturn talisman, which I always keep under a glass dome, so it's kind of cut off. It's completely Saturnized over the years. It's 30 years old at least. So that, no, it's not 30, it would have been made anyway, way back then. But every time I have a difficult Saturn transit, I bring it out and then I put it somewhere. And every time, because when you look at something, it's also a form of interaction and engagement with. So it's kind of like when I look at it, maybe I've got a few attributes that I shift around and I play around with the formation of the objects and things. So I'm engaging with Saturn on a symbolic level, if you know what I mean. And I'm saying to Saturn as well, okay, you're going to square my sun and moon now, but hey, look, you've got this honored place in my house. I'm engaging with you. I'm welcoming you in. I'm not afraid of you. I'm open for you. I'm ready for you. Bring it on. I think that on a psychological level, it changes the way that you are experiencing that transit. You give it some kind of a concrete expression in your life.
together. You're creating a symbiotic relationship
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the
yeah,
unseen and you
yeah.
constantly.
Yeah, because looking is doing. Every time we give something our attention, every time, so a shrine, because I'm sure you strike me as the sort of person as well who has shrines very, every time you engage with that place, it's energy, and they form important sort of, I don't know, kind of areas of thoughtfulness or reflection in your home, that takes you away from the mundane and reminds you that we are spiritual beings on a spiritual journey on this beautiful planet we can call our home, I
Yeah.
like that, I don't want it to just be about, the mundane. I need some kind of spiritual outlet or spiritual energy in my life. I'm just not, on any level, I can't survive without that, I think.
Oh, I'm absolutely 100% there with you. It is inviting the magic back, isn't it?
Yeah,
Uh, I am absolutely open to great mystery, whatever that means to me,
yeah,
and this whole concept that life is full of symbolism.
yeah,
Often when I work with clients, I don't work with talismans, but I just think this is fantastic what you're doing. But I encourage them if they're having a difficult transit to go and talk to the planet or
yeah,
planet,
yeah,
right to the planet. Uh,
definitely.
Create a storyboard so the planet and you have this
Yeah,
book on, and then it's not scary anymore.
wonderful. I love all that stuff,
Yeah,
soul collaging and all of that. Yeah,
absolutely.
fantastic. Yeah,
Everyone out there, if you're scared, a difficult transit is coming up, which is a square, an opposition. It can be a conjunction, doesn't have to be, but it
yeah,
is. Use that well. Don't go, oh my God, I'm going to die or something.
yeah,
I'm going,
yeah,
oh, or I'm going to lose everything. Have a conversation. See what the
yeah,
wants of you
yeah,
that you're not paying attention to.
yeah, yeah.
So, Liz,
I think, mm.
just to finish off, what would you like to say to people about astrology, astrological magic, and creating talismans as they start to enhance their understanding of astrology?
As I say, I don't think it's everybody's cup of tea, but if you are listening and it is your cup of tea, then the article I just recommended at the very beginning is a good place to start. And there's a couple of really good books out there. The Picatrix, for example, we all know 3 books of occult philosophy. I like Steinbrecher, the Inner Guide. Oh my God, there's so many. I really had a whole period of going into the hoodoo, the American hoodoo stuff, like paper in my shoe, candle magic. I love all that stuff. Yeah. But then you've got the real sort of meaty stuff, like the Orphic hymns or, Hans Dieter Betz, the Greek magical papyri, Iamblichus on the mysteries, which is the early Greek Hellenistic sort of stuff. But, take your time and don't rush into things. I mean, look at what's coming up. What have we got? I mean, Saturn in Aries, you don't want to do. So you've got to get your planets in a very, very good position in their own sign or sign of exaltation to really, to really make a talisman. But start with, if you want to make your own, start with a planet that is a benefic, like Venus, for example, Venus in Libra. And I'll show you, for example, because I was just saying
In Leo, it loves being in Leo.
so this is the Jupiter one I made.
Oh, wow.
So the pin is in the middle. I added to it because I told you I pimped it because I was coming to talk to you and I thought it's time it got a bit of a revamp. But this is just a Jupiter hammered into a piece of tin there. So for Mercury or for for Venus, you could use, soft wax and make a rose or, and just to, wind your thoughts while you're making it. And that planet has to be angular, but do some homework. Don't just dive in, without any foreknowledge of what you're going to do and how you're going to, take care of yourself in that process.
He's very alive and very, and very assertive.
Yeah. Just tread softly,
Tread
but
soft.
don't be afraid. If your
Yeah,
intention, I honestly do believe good intentions do no harm. That's
yeah.
what I think. If your intentions are completely, which mine have always been, I'm not interested
Yeah.
in other stuff. I'm not going to be making, nasty talismans for anything. That's not my cup of tea.
Thoughts to other people. That does not work. I'm also thinking a very simple way of making a talisman is maybe having a stone and then painting
Absolutely. That is what I did for Saturn. I
yeah,
got different stones that were, grey and slate and, because I made a few, because you've got a few minutes and I just painted
yeah,
Saturn's symbol onto the stone. You can do paper magic,
did. But you'll find your way. Just do, just a simple thing like that is
Yeah.
just works extremely well. Liz, thank
Because the idea is, just to say again, the idea is really, I think, the fundamental idea is to know your astrology more deeply, to kind of have a personal relationship with the planets, your own personal relationship.
yeah, and have that lovely symbiotic relationship. The planets do not compel.
No, they do not.
Not.
No,
You have to
no.
work with them.
Yes, yes, indeed. Well,
Exactly.
thank you so much, Sue.
Oh, it's just been so lovely to meet you. I can't tell you. And Liz, do you run workshops or courses on astrological magic?
No, I haven't, but I'm actually thinking of, like I said, I've been caught up with the book really. At times, it's always been like in the background and then it come back in my life and I'd have to do X, Y, and Z and then it would be so I feel unburdened now that book is there. I feel like a weight is lifted off me. So I don't know I mean, Jupiter, I do think that Jupiter in Leo is for all of us an opportunity to explore our own potential, So I don't know what I'm going to do in the next year, but Jupiter's coming up to the mid-heaven, so I'll be doing something.
Will be. And
Yeah.
the first one who signs up.
One question for you, Sue. Are you coming to Oldenzaal in September? Yeah. Oh, great. Because then we'll meet
Yes,
in the
yes.
flesh.
So just for everybody, Liz and I are going to be talking at the same conference in Holland.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, and that's in November, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. First weekend, I think, of
Yeah,
November.
first weekend. Liz, it's just been a pleasure. I'm so looking forward to meeting you in person.
Yes. Same. Same here.
Right.
Thank you, Sue.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. And for everybody out there, thanks so much for listening. If you like what we've been talking about, leave us a message because we love to hear from you. Take
Yeah.
care now. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.